Before we begin, pause for a moment and think about the life you want. Not the life you are currently living, but the one you imagine when you allow yourself to think honestly about your future. Maybe it is a life with greater freedom. Maybe it is a life with stronger discipline. Maybe it is a life where you feel confident in the direction you are moving. Most people carry a vision like this somewhere in their mind. They imagine becoming more focused, more productive, more calm under pressure. They imagine building better habits, stronger relationships, and a sense of purpose that makes each day meaningful. But something strange often happens. Even though the vision is clear, the path toward it feels difficult. People set goals, they create plans, they promise themselves that change will begin tomorrow. And for a short time, things improve. But then, old habits slowly return. Comfort begins to pull them back. The same routines, the same distractions, and the same patterns quietly reappear. Eventually, many people start asking themselves an uncomfortable question. Why is it so hard to become the person I want to be? The answer is not always obvious, but it is remarkably simple. The life you want requires a different version of you. Not a slightly improved version, a different version. The person who builds that life thinks differently, acts differently, chooses differently when faced with the same daily decisions. They wake up with a different set of standards. They manage their time differently. They respond to difficulty with a different mindset. And perhaps most importantly, they understand something that many people overlook. The future you want cannot be built with the same habits that created the life you have today. Growth always requires transformation. Not overnight, not through dramatic effort, but through a series of small decisions that slowly reshape who you are. This audiobook is about understanding that transformation. We will explore why people often remain stuck in familiar patterns, even when they want something better. We will look at how identity shapes behavior and how changing the way you see yourself can unlock new possibilities. And we will talk about practical ways to begin becoming the person capable of building the life you want. Because the truth is encouraging. You do not need to wait for perfect motivation. You do not need to completely reinvent yourself overnight. You only need to begin the process of becoming the version of yourself that your future requires. And that process begins with awareness. Let's begin. Part 1. Why your current habits cannot build your future. Many people spend years chasing a better life without realizing something important. They focus on changing their circumstances. They want a better job, more income, more freedom, more confidence. But they rarely stop to ask a deeper question. What kind of person consistently lives the life I want? Because the uncomfortable truth is this: the life you want is not built by wishes or motivation. It is built by identity. Every life is the result of repeated behaviors. The habits you practice each day quietly shape your future. If someone wakes up early, protects their focus, improves their skills, and keeps promises to themselves, their life will slowly move in a certain direction. If someone avoids difficult work, gives in to distractions, and negotiates with discipline, their life will move in a different direction. This process happens slowly and almost invisibly. Most people do not notice it day to day, but over months and years, the difference becomes enormous. Two people can begin in the same place, the same opportunities, the same intelligence, the same potential, but their daily standards determine where they end up. And this is where many people struggle. They want a different life, but they continue operating with the same habits that produced their current results. They want the future version of themselves, but they are still living according to the rules of their past. Think about this honestly. The person who builds the life you admire probably does certain things very differently. They manage their time carefully. They protect their attention from constant distraction. They continue working even when motivation disappears. They understand that progress rarely comes from dramatic effort. It comes from consistent standards. This is the part many people resist. Changing your life does not begin with external success. It begins with internal change. You must become the person capable of creating that life. That does not mean becoming perfect. It means upgrading the standards you live by. It means choosing discipline more often than comfort. It means protecting your focus instead of surrendering it to every distraction. And most importantly, it means understanding that the person you are today does not need to stay the same. Identity is not fixed. It evolves through behavior. Every decision you make is shaping the version of yourself you are becoming. When you choose focus instead of distraction, you strengthen the identity of someone who follows through. When you finish difficult tasks instead of postponing them, you reinforce the identity of someone who keeps commitments. Over time, those small decisions accumulate. Eventually, they create a completely different version of you. And that new version of you is capable of building the life you once believed was out of reach. This transformation does not require perfection. It requires awareness. Once you see clearly that your identity shapes your future, something important changes. You stop asking, "What do I want?" and you begin asking a much more powerful question. What kind of person must I become to build that life? That question is where real growth begins. Part 2. Becoming the person your future requires. Once you understand that the life you want requires a different version of you, the next question becomes practical. How does someone actually become that person? Most people assume change begins with a large decision. They believe transformation requires dramatic effort, a sudden burst of motivation, or a perfect plan. But real change almost never works that way. Transformation begins with much smaller moments. It begins in ordinary decisions that most people overlook. Every day you are given dozens of opportunities to reinforce the person you are becoming. Small moments where you can choose comfort or choose growth. You can scroll through distractions or focus on something meaningful. You can postpone difficult work or move forward despite resistance. You can break a promise to yourself or follow through on what you said you would do. At first, these moments feel insignificant, but they are not. They are shaping your identity. Every action you take sends a message to your mind about who you are. If you consistently give in to distraction, your mind learns that you are someone who avoids effort. If you repeatedly follow through on commitments, your mind learns that you are someone who acts with discipline. This is how identity is built, not through intention, through behavior. And the encouraging truth is that identity can change quickly once behavior changes. You do not need to transform your entire life in a single week. You only need to begin proving to yourself that you are capable of acting differently. Start with one habit that represents the person you want to become. If you want to become someone who is focused, create time each day where distractions are removed and meaningful work happens. If you want to become someone who is disciplined, choose a small commitment and follow through on it every day. If you want to become someone who is calm under pressure, practice pausing before reacting to difficult situations. The key is not intensity. The key is consistency. When small actions are repeated daily, they begin to reshape the way you see yourself. And when your identity changes, your behavior begins to feel natural rather than forced. A person who sees themselves as disciplined does not argue with themselves about whether to work. They simply begin. A person who sees themselves as responsible does not constantly delay important decisions. They handle them. Over time, these actions compound. Small improvements accumulate into significant change. And slowly, almost without noticing, the version of you that once felt distant begins to appear. The confident version, the focused version, the disciplined version. Not because you wished for it, but because you practiced becoming that person every day. And once that identity becomes strong enough, the life you once imagined no longer feels impossible. It begins to feel inevitable. The decision that changes everything. Before this audiobook ends, pause for a moment, not to relax, but to think honestly about your life, because the truth is that information alone does not change anyone. Advice does not change anyone. Even inspiration rarely changes anyone. What changes a life is a decision. A quiet decision that most people postpone for years. The decision to stop living by the habits that created their current life. Think about the life you want. The version of yourself who is more disciplined, more focused, more confident. That version of you is not imaginary. It is simply the result of different daily standards, different choices repeated consistently. But here is the part many people struggle to accept. The life you want will never appear while the old version of you remains in control. The old habits, the old excuses, the old negotiations with comfort. Those patterns will continue building the same results, and that is why change must begin somewhere deeper. It must begin with identity. You must begin seeing yourself as the person capable of building that life, not someday, but now. Because identity is not something you wait to earn. Identity is something you practice. Every time you act according to higher standards, you reinforce the identity of the person you want to become. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you strengthen that identity. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build trust in the person you are becoming. And that trust is the foundation of everything. Once you trust yourself, your goals become larger, your focus becomes stronger, your future becomes clearer. But none of that begins tomorrow. It begins with one decision. The decision that the person you are becoming is more important than the comfort you feel today. So before this audio ends, ask yourself one simple question. If the life you want requires a different version of you, what is one standard you will begin living by today? Not 10, just one. Maybe it is protecting 1 hour of focused work each day. Maybe it is waking up at a consistent time. Maybe it is removing distractions that constantly pull your attention away from what matters. Whatever it is, begin there. Because the life you want will never be built through intentions alone. It will be built through the standards you practice daily. And the moment you begin living by those standards, something powerful happens. You stop waiting for a better future. You begin creating it. One decision at a time. One action at a time. One day at a time. And eventually, without even realizing it, you will look back and see that the person you once hoped to become is the person you chose to build. Thank you for joining us here at Tilt and Chill.